it's Tea with Tammy. I'm actually doing this live today. I hope I don't make a complete fool out of myself because I think this is going to be a little bit longer and it's taking me forever to upload these when I record them. So I'm going live, and if you catch the replay, let me know. So good news, we got into my tea cabinet. Daniel and I went shopping on Saturday and we bought a bunch of skeleton keys and we found one. So I'm into my tea cabinet today. So today I am using this beautiful hand-painted teacup. It kind of goes along with my talk today because it's about how tea changed people's lives. And so in the 50s, housewives, this was their craft of the day. They would, I don't know, I guess go to the craft store. I don't know. Did they have craft stores then? I don't know. And they would paint, excuse me, that's my frame. I just got a video on there. They would paint these little teacups and teapots, and I have several of these. A lot of people collect them, and they're so beautiful when you find them because they're all hand done. And I am drinking, I don't know if you can see it, it's very light. I'm drinking a white tea today. It's an Assam Silver Needles, and it is so, so yummy. Assam is considered the little black dress of the tea world. It's usually a black tea, and it's very, very dark. A lot of people drink it like a breakfast tea, so, but this is exquisite. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about a class I used to do in the tea room. We would have events and groups come in, and they would ask me to do a tea talk. And so I had all these different tea talks I could pull from. And so this one I used to call A Brief History of Tea and How It Affected Us Socially. So I hope you find it interesting. Tea really did bring some fun things in for our lives. It was very scandalous, and it changed people's lives. So this is just an overview. I hope it doesn't go too long because you know how I like to just ramble on, but I do have cards today to try to keep me on track. And so let's just get started. So tea was introduced in the 17th century by Catherine Braganza. I hope I'm saying that right. She was a Portuguese princess who married Charles II in 1662. And when she arrived at the palace, she brought a casket, that's what they would call it, of 3 pounds of tea and introduced tea to the royal life. So during this time, for the everyday person, water was polluted. And so they didn't drink water then. They drank wine and ale and all kinds of other alcohols. And so a large amount of alcohol was consumed, and it caused a lot of problems. So there are quotes that would talk about men drinking so much alcohol at dinner, which were huge affairs. They would go on for 3 to 4 hours, and large amounts of alcohol would be consumed. And so one quote was, "It's not unusual for men to drink themselves into a coma and end up under the table." And the women didn't get by with it either, because there's other quotes in history that say ladies also would become heated and stupefy their brains with ale and wine all throughout the day. So women were not immune to this, and alcohol was the beverage of choice at the time. But tea began to change some people's attitudes, and it started showing up in letters and diaries that instead of consuming alcohol after dinner, people were choosing tea, men and women. And this started as early as 1688. So this kind of led the way to the temperance movement. We're going to get to that. But not everyone approved of this change. Henry Saville wrote to his uncle, who was Mr. Secretary Coventry of His Majesty's government. And he complained of his friends who would call for tea instead of pipes and bottles. And he complimented his uncle and said, well, first he said this was a base, unworthy Indian practice, but he admired his uncle's most Christian family values that they did not consume in this manner. So, you know, it seems crazy today, but it was a Christian thing to do. So during this time, we're still in the 17th century, because everyone started drinking more tea, furniture started changing. So they would pull the tables into the center of the room, in their little room for after dinner drinks, and brought the chairs in from the walls. They, all sat against the walls. And so people started noticing, we're seeing the backs of chairs now. And so furniture makers started carving the back of chairs. Tables were also raised to a little higher level, and little lips were put on them, of course, to keep the tea stuff from sliding off. So that kind of changed our furniture a little bit. The other thing that happened was tips became a new term. Tips means to ensure promptness. And so what this was in the tea and coffee shops, because tea was so expensive, most people could not afford to buy tea to have at home. And so they could only get it in these little tiny cups at the tea and coffee shop. And they could buy 1 cup, but they couldn't afford to buy lots of cups. So they would walk in and they would throw shillings very loudly into a metal box as soon as you walked in the door, and that would alert the servers to there's a big spender here, and they would run over and give them the best service possible. And so it became tips. Okay, let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, let's consider how expensive tea was at the time. In household accounts, brandy was 31 shillings. Tea was 40 shillings per pound. Quite a bit. When you consider that estate lawyers at the time made £20 a year, by the 1690s, household expenses were showing tea at £26 a pound. So an estate lawyer couldn't even afford to buy a pound of tea. Okay, move into the 18th century. Because tea was so expensive and workers were making not enough to buy it, the average unskilled worker at this time was making 10 shillings a week. So this led to a lot of smuggling. And people discovered that they could put 30 pounds of tea on their body and smuggle tea. And so instead of making 10 shillings a week, they could up themselves, they could give themselves a raise. And for 30 pounds, they were making 20 shillings a night. So this was quite the increase for people. And Richard Twining said that at this time, smuggling was about 2/3 of the tea trade. So this was huge. Well, these smugglers were, very smart, and they were liking their profits. And so they thought, how can we make even more money? So they started adulterating the tea. So, tea is expensive. It's highly taxed. It's so taxed. And so they started getting just any old leaves and twigs and adding some sheep dung to it and some other things to color it. And they started selling this tea called smooch. And the tea companies were outraged because, of course, they want their quality to be great. And so this is when genuine tea started being stamped on tea crates. And you still see this today. A lot of tea companies still have genuine in their name. It just is a carryover to protect against smugglers. So that is where that came from. All right, during this time, we're in the 18th century, grand tea parties started popping up. And this was leading to the temperance movement. They were using these tea parties to push along the temperance movement. And so posters would be put all over town, and they would say, turn away from alcohol, drink tea, lead a healthy, active life. And people would come to get the tea, and the servers were called teetotalers because they committed to no more alcohol in their lives and that they would only drink tea. And there you have it. If you're like my husband, who always says, I wonder where that word came from. Now you know. All right, so let's move into the 19th century. And the 7th Duchess of Bedford, her name was Anna Marie, was the first woman to bring in afternoon tea. Now, this was not a new event. It was a new time. And this was scandalous. It was done in secret. And for some reason, women eating in the middle of the day was just, oh my, So, it was called shameful by many, many people. But she was having this little sinking feeling in the afternoon, and she asked for tea and little cakes to be brought to her. And she was having so much fun and enjoying this tea time that she started inviting her friends. So women were coming, and they were sneaking over and eating tea in the middle of the afternoon. Imagine, there are so many worse things we could be doing with our lives, but they were drinking tea. So they would hold tea in the little chambers off their bedrooms. They were called tea closets. They started becoming tea closets. Now, I also want to say, even though this was done so frequently. This was like 1830s, this started happening. And by the 1840s, it was a regular new tradition. But it was not mentioned in tea books, cookbooks, until 1967. So that's how long this was kept a secret. So anyway, she started inviting all her friends. They started coming over for afternoon tea. And at this time, women were wearing corsets because the average waist size was 18 inches. 18 inches. So their corsets were tied very tight. But here they are eating cakes and sandwiches and drinking tea, and there's just way too much food being consumed, and they were so uncomfortable in their corsets. So those corsets started being left at home. And they started coming in these flowy chiffon gowns that they wore under their clothes. And this was the beginning of our lingerie. So men, you have a lot to be thankful for with tea. So this just added to the scandal. These women were coming out, drinking tea in the middle of the afternoon in their underwear. So tea, I'm telling you, it's a scandalous history. This brought changes, though, to porcelain and linen companies because tea equipment and tablecloths and napkins started showing up in catalogs. Little handles were added to the teacups because we wouldn't want women to burn their fingers. And so a lot of this brought more changes to our tea world. Most women could not afford a teacup for all their friends. And so when you were invited to afternoon tea, you would bring your own teacup, which was, I bet, so fun to see everybody's teacups. And they had these little tea bags that teacup bags that they would bring to their friends' houses. So let's see. Man, I just scrolled right on through those tags. Okay, move right up to the 20th century. Those scandalous tea gowns are coming out into public for the first time. The tango hit London in 1910, and women started coming out. Tango and tea went together. They were called Tango Tea dances. So you throw in a scandalous dress and a new exotic dance from Argentina, and you've got this social rage going on hitting London, and this added even so much more. The women's ankles were being exposed for the first time at these tango tea dances. All right, so that was the 20th century. We're moving right along up to in 1875. Tea is just everywhere at this point, and so retail shops started thinking, let's get more people in by offering some great tea. And so tea tables were brought into retail establishments, and that's when the tea rooms came along, and they stayed very, very high in popularity until those Americans came along in 1950 with their fast food and coffee. And so tea kind of waned and lost its appeal for the tea rooms because coffee shops started popping up. But by 1980, there was a renaissance in tea rooms, and they stayed around for 15, 20 years until, 2000, early 2000s. Tea rooms started waning again, which is about the time that, we were closing down too. So I hope you have enjoyed. Oh, but let me tell you, we have tea everywhere today. Tea is made all over the world. It's in everything now. It's not just a beverage. It's in our health and beauty. You can get tea cream rinses for your hair and tea facials, and look at the antioxidant levels in green tea. They tell people to drink it if you have some blood pressure issues. It'll help lower your blood pressure. So there's so much in tea, and tea is still so popular. It's the second most consumed beverage in the world, first being water. So that's my tea time with Tami today. I hope you enjoy it. Happy sipping. We have the drop today. I hope you will watch some of my reels and see the drop. And if you want the app, just ask. I'll give you the app. I also have $25 share codes. And this cute little top is dropping again today in a sweet blue and white color. So there's also this incredible vest. And anyone who knows me knows I love vests. So watch the reels today. If you're interested, let me know. Have a great day and happy sipping.